Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, sorry. Today we have our guest speaker, His Holiness Bhaktimarga Swami Maharaj. He has been a member of ISKCON since 1973 and is a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. He is an instructor in Bhakti Yoga, Mantra meditation, Kirtan, as well as interactive dance, and also produces many theatrical productions, some of them being The Boatman, Age of Kali, and many more that have been presented all over the world. He is also popularly known as the Walking Monk. He's accomplished the feat of walking across Canada, I believe, 4 times, as well as the USA once. And apart from these countries, Maharaj has also walked in many places around the world, including Ireland, the Fiji Islands, Trinidad, Mauritius, Guyana, as well as Israel. And currently, he serves as the GBC for Canada and Miami. So once again, I'd like to welcome His Holiness Bhaktimarga Swami Maharaj and hand it over to him. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for the fine introduction. Just a little correction, I'm not in Miami anymore, but I am in Alaska and like 6 states, northern states, which includes um, the famous park, Yellowstone National Park. We got the bears, the bears and the bison. So thank you very much. Um, we usually open up by singing a song. I think it might be okay just to briefly go through it. Uh, because of the delay in the response through Zoom, it's a little awkward. Therefore, don't mind if you have a muddling sound of craziness, almost to the tune of mindlessness, which is our topic of discussion. Mindfulness versus mindlessness. Okay, so Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girvaradhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Thank you very much. Okay. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishnasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Harine Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Shri Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I assume we're talking to mostly devotees from the Ottawa area. And I think we have somebody also, Shivin, that I met for the first time today. And he's from Brantford, the telephone city, and also Wayne Gretzky's town. Haribol. Thank you. Okay, we are going to be looking at the topic mindfulness versus mindlessness. So I would like to start with a quote from Bhagavad Gita, and I'll just not going through the Sanskrit necessarily, but just the English. If we're talking about anything to do with the mind and its connections to Vedic philosophy, we can make reference to chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita. That chapter is entitled Dhyana Yoga, and dhyana refers to meditation. So when you meditate, you utilize the facility of what we call the mind. I'm scared. So the mind is an interesting instrument, and the mind is addressed with several verses here in chapter 6 from the Gita. And I'm going to take 4 of those verses grouped together to discuss really what we mean by mindfulness and the ultimate end. Okay, so here it is. In the stage of perfection called trance or samadhi, one's mind is completely restrained from material mental activities by practice of yoga. This perfection is characterized by one's ability to see the self by the pure mind and to relish and rejoice in the self. In that joyous state, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth, and upon gaining this, he or she thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Is it possible? I think there's some distortion from your mic coming. Is it touching something, or because we're getting a little bit of a feedback?
How is it right now?
It's good now.
It's good now.
Yes.
I'll tell you what it is. I
Okay.
only have few fans, um, Bhaktimarga Swami fans that I know of. But there is one fan that was very close to the to the computer here, and it was an outrageous fan. Okay, it was vibrating. So, is it okay? Do you want me to repeat it, or are we okay?
I think it's okay, devotees. Did we all hear that? You get a thumbs up or a okay, Vraja? You heard it? Yeah, I think it's okay, Maharaj. We heard it.
Okay, great. What we glean from these collection of verses is something about joyousness, the use of the mind, which is purified. That means it's made connection with the intelligence. There's a little bit of a difference between the mind and the intelligence. And another word that comes here is rejoice, relish, happiness. Um, let's see, freedom from miseries. That's another way of saying happiness. These 4 verses are all about a kind of salvation or liberation when there's liberation from the material entanglements. Okay, so beautiful verses from the Gita. You might like to look at them before you go to sleep. Okay, now talking about reading, let's define maybe what mindlessness is. Have you ever read a book, whether it's something like George Orwell, and I like his stuff, or let's say even Prabhupada's books? You've read, please, you've read something, you've read a page from a book, and suddenly, and then you stop for a minute and say, hey, what did I just read? Was do you recall anything? You have to check yourself a little bit. And if the answer is that you don't remember, that means you're mindless, at least for that moment. You haven't been able to focus. Your mind is on other things, and you're kind of like a dribbling, like a bouncing basketball, and you're here, you're there, you're in the hoop, you miss the hoop, you're just all over the place. And this is the nature of the mind when it's not trained or controlled. So mindlessness is very prevalent. And when people do mindless things, your best friend or your spouse will say, are you out of your mind? And did you know we're in the public, and and I think we all catch ourselves doing some silly things. So that's means when you're mindless. Um, I'll give another example. Just like say, sometimes you're eating and you eat some like really good, delicious food, prasadam, and your mind is on you know, other things, such as, oh, things didn't go well at work today. Oh, my boss was giving me such a hard time, and my coworker, oh, she was just getting under my skin, you know. So you are thinking all these things are taxing you, and while you're eating, you're not even enjoying the food. You're gulping it, you're wolfing it down real fast. You're not getting the textures, you're not getting the tastes. It's not registering the way it should. And of course, we've got the best cuisine in the world. It's Indian, ISKCON, Hare Krishna, stuff all mixed together, and it's wonderful, a wonderful cuisine, but you're not attentive to it, you know, and that's what we mean by mindlessness, when you're not attentive to the moment. And this is really like living for the moment, being very much in the present situation is what we want. That's called mindfulness. It's a very common term now, especially in yoga circles, and just it's pretty mainstream, I would say. And there are some people, if you look online to see who came up with that terminology, you're going to get mixed answers. It'll be this guy or that person, and oftentimes it's going to have like a Buddhist source. And what people don't understand, that Buddhism, Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist ways, Buddhist, yeah, mindset, it comes from the Vedas. It's from India. It's more Hindu than it is Buddhist. But you know, anybody who's got a connection with Hinduism or Vedic culture or ISKCON, we don't take the credit when we should. We should grab it and say it came from the Vedas, it came from India thousands of years ago, and it didn't just come up like in the 20th century by so-and-so monk from Tibet. It really is, it goes way back. And come on, India, let's get it together and let's take some credit for the martial arts, for the amazing cuisine, medicine, and so on, astronomy, astrology, et cetera, et cetera. Let's go for it. Okay. So the way we use the word mind is in different ways. In the colloquial terms, I made up my mind, you know, because I changed my mind. Mind your manners, mind your step, mind your head. That's if you're going down steps and then the awning above is a little bit low, so there might be a sign there, mind your head. Or, and sometimes when you go down an elevator, mind your step, like a robotic voice comes out there, mind your step. Or like one of those, you go, there's this trolley thing at the Toronto airport, which goes super fast. It goes, and I love it. It goes, it's almost like a plane. There's a medium speed, and then there's a super, and it makes all this noise, and they have something else, mind yourself. So that means to be conscious, to be aware of. Other ways that the word mind is used. What you told me just blew my mind, you know. So the mind can't really be blown. I guess it can. when there's an overwhelming, let's say, stimuli, you know, coming your way, then your mind can be blown. Or like devotees will sometimes, oh, you know, that was such a great kirtan, that blew my mind, you know. Okay, and here's another way that the mind can be used in an interesting way, to almost indicate mindlessness. Okay, as soon as I went up on the stage and I faced the audience, my mind just went blank. I don't know if you ever had that experience before. You had it all, you did all your homework, you got all your notes together, and you memorized everything, and you're really, like, say, confident of yourself. And then you go up the steps, and then you go to audience, and people are even clapping like this, yay, bravo. Okay, you didn't even do anything yet. And then you turn and face them, and it's like Arjuna, you know, when he knew who he's dealing with, and he knew he was dealing with the Kauravas and their incredible vast army of 11 divisions. And he only had 7 army divisions. If you ever want to remember what were the numbers were. Just think of the store, 7-Eleven. So 7 was with the Pandavas, 11 was with the Kauravas. And so he's looking out, Krishna led the chariot, and he's looking out, and he went blank. He kind of like anything that made sense to him before, anything that was logically right, which was to fight for Dharma, to fight for his rights, to fight for his family, everything that he was, pressing Yudhishthira towards was just, it just went out the window, just blank. So he blanked out and he got into depression, and mindlessness oftentimes leads to depression. And depression can be dealt with by encouraging words, and Krishna's words are most encouraging. So as let's look at some quotes about mindfulness. First of all, I'll give you mine, okay? This very moment is the best moment which was born of the past and which will shape the future. Therefore, it deserves our full attention. Okay, mindfulness. Here's what some other people had to say about mindfulness from Penna Chodron. I'm not sure of the nationality, but apparently they got a high rating. Okay, rejoicing in ordinary things is not sentimental or trite. It actually takes guts. So this is very profound, at least for me. When you zero in on the simple things in life, when you register them and process them, digest them, it means you're very thoughtful. That means your mind is in the right place. You are very much in the present. So it's not sensational things always. It's not sentimental or emotionally charged things that should be something that we take note of and remember from here on until kingdom come. It's more about the simple things. And what I learned about walking is a lot of thoughtfulness comes into your pacing, and that it's you see things that you didn't notice before because you're going at a pace that you're supposed to be moving at, a pace that is almost alien to people now because of the fast moving. And again, that thing that in the airport. But have you been on a plane, like sitting motionless like a prisoner for several hours, nonstop from Delhi to Toronto, like you don't mind going, you don't mind going fast. Here's something from Chogyam Trungpa. Altogether, the idea of meditation is not to create states of ecstasy or absorption, but to experience being. So again, it's about honoring the present. The moment is good right now, even though there's no fast cars around you. It's just whatever is there now. It is to be enjoyed. It's to be entertained by. So again, same kind of thing. To be very mindful of all that's around you. To be conscious. And as Prabhupada used to use the term, first be conscious, and then you can become Krishna conscious. Like I've been to some temples where they use styrofoam. I said, excuse me, but this is not being very mindful, and we're not being very conscious. And I've heard the saying, oh, we're still just using up what's left over. And I said, the last time I came to your temple, that was 10 years ago. So you get them on the spot and they turn red, and so we have to be mindful of how we deal with the planet Earth, how we deal with each other, how to be nice. It's a matter of really just being kind to each other. That should be our dharma, being kind. Worried if that will spill over. So we've got another one from Sharon Salzberg. That's life, starting over, one breath at a time. So each breath that we take, every time we inhale and exhale, it's actually a special moment. And it's a matter of being thoughtful. There was this one, Dr. David Frawley. He writes a lot of Vedic books. And he was talking about the mode of goodness He was describing the three gunas: goodness, passion, and ignorance. We all know what ignorance is. He used the word darkness. And then his description of passion is restlessness. And then the word he used for goodness, or what we call sattvagun, was to be thoughtful, again, to be mindful. It's just another word for the same thing. Here's something from Alan Locos. You cannot control the results, only your actions. Now that looks like it's a page taken right out of the Bhagavad Gita. You are responsible for your actions. You cannot be attached to the results of your work, but be attached to your work. Just doing the best job, being mindful. We know that a lot of people, they don't like work, but you can like work if you are thoughtful about it. Even on an assembly line, my father worked on an assembly line, and I don't think he really minded. He was quite robotic about it, and we learned by living on the farm, weeding and things, gardening. It's a little bit like that, but you just have to kind of like it. You just have to impose upon yourself, this is to be liked. It's not about the income that's coming to help the family or giving you a few extra dollars. It's just about liking what's there. Why not like it? I think what my dad used to complain about is the people who would complain. My dad would complain about people complaining, and he wondered, why are they always complaining? But really now in the terminologies that we're using here is that you don't have to complain if you're thoughtful. You don't have to, like sort of like a guy cutting down a tree or getting wood together for the winters warming of the cabin inside. It's okay. You just have to there's a rhythm, and rhythm there's joy that comes from all kinds of rhythm, like walking or walking by a beach and hearing the water lapping along the way, or like most people love rhythm in the form of music. And but rhythm comes through work all the time, whether you're rolling chapatis or offering incense there's a rhythm there to the deities, and then going on offering the incense to the people and to the devatas and the Prabhupadas and Murti. There's a beautiful rhythm there. Enjoy it. Why are we despising that which is real? So as I mentioned before, when we're talking about mindfulness, we also have to refer to the mind, and there's some beautiful examples. The mind, should we analyze it a little bit as to what it is? Well, it is one way to look at it. It's a container, and it absorbs, kind of like a computer. It takes data in, and it retains it. The mind is a good retainer, and sometimes when you sleep at night, there's the output of these impressions that you have in your mind. And sometimes they come across like a Salvador Dali painting, where it's very surrealistic. And Prabhupada gives the example of the mind registers a mountain, and then it registers some gold. So you saw gold, and you saw a mountain. And then the mind does, it kind of puts these things together, and in a dream you see a golden mountain. Well, I've never seen a golden mountain, but in my dream I may have seen a golden mountain, because I took different objects and I kind of, let's say, stir them up together like a little bit of a kitchery. Oftentimes dreams don't make much sense, but it's a conglomerate of emotions and impressions, and I guess some of us dream in color, some of us dream in black and white or sepia tone. I think there's different if you're wondering what I'm doing here, I'm actually referring to people that I'm getting their support. I have 3 fans here. two human bodies and the fan, which was disturbing everyone earlier on. By the way, the mind doesn't have to be disturbed, but its tendency is to be all over the place. Chanchalang himana Krishna, pramati balavadridam. The mind is like flickering. It is like the example, that's beautiful example given by Lord Krishna. It's like a candle in a windless place. When I was a kid, we were fascinated by Christmas, and we would have candles, and you put them by the window, right? Because that's Christmas is a time for candles. In India, it's candles or diyas is for Diwali, Festival of Lights. But we used to just love candles, And if there was a little bit of wind coming through the cracks of the glass and the not so well caulked window frame, then you would get the flame would go like this.
Yeah.
It would flicker. It'll go this way sometimes, and then it might go that way, And you're looking at this, and it's quite fascinating. But if you put if it's like there's no disturbance outside, there's hardly a breeze, then the flame just goes up like this. Very focused, very direct, right up to Krishna's lotus feet in the spiritual world. Haribol. And this is what we want for the mind. When we talk about the mind, it's addressed in several verses. Indriyani paranyahur, indriyabhya paranmanaha, manasastu parabudhir, yo bude paratastu saha. So this is like a hierarchy of the self. When we talk about the self, sometimes it's the matter and the spirit. Sometimes it's the physical body and the soul and everything else in between. So in this case, it talks about the physical body, the machinery, and the organs that are attached to it, just like the two eyes, the two nostrils, the mouth, the ears, sense of touch. They're called knowledge acquiring senses. And then you have the working senses and the organs that are there. And there are the hands, there are the feet, there is the tongue, there is the and the and these are called part of the city of nine gates as well. So this is what we mean by the first layer of the self. It's the physical external being. Then a higher level is what we call the mind. It's a subtle sense. It is out of these senses that I mentioned here, it is the subtle, it's the sixth sense, by the way. Center of the senses even, because many things get computed impressions through the mind. And then higher than the mind is the intelligence and our brain power, our ability to, again, absorb much more, let's say, broader, more cognitive things. And then finally, we have what's called the soul itself, the soul proper. So that's what we're made up of, all these things. So if you put a line through the lower self and the higher self, the lower self is the body and the organs and the mind. And then the higher self is the intelligence and the soul. So Krishna is telling Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna, who was mindless for a bit, and he was becoming mindful, by the Lord saying, control your lower self by your higher self. Listen more to your higher being, to that which is lofty and not that which is loathsome. So the reason why we practice Krishna consciousness is to expose our mind to the more, let's say, pure aspects of life, the more loving things, the things that are going to generate more optimism and bring you back to the place where we all want to go, which is back to Godhead. And instead of the mindlessness, we are being very much exposed to all those things that are quite harmful, very detrimental to our spiritual benefit. There is very little censorship that exists in the world, and that's another real downside of technology. There is no blockage, there is no control. Young children, they can see anything practically, and their innocence is destroyed at an early age. So the best thing you can do is have a Krishna environment, and that when people, they want entertainment, But instead of going to the gutter with entertainment, if we can provide entertainment and stimulating things of a Krishna conscious nature, Krishna centric material, then we will have a better chance to reach higher positions, higher destinations in life. So what I want to do is just read for you. I put a poem together. I don't know if we read this to our group here, but I just did it recently, and it's called Dear Mind. Okay, and we're addressing mindlessness and pushing ourselves towards mindfulness through this poem. So here it is. Dear mind, some days you are friend, some days you are foe. You swing moods up, you swing them low. I can't always trust. You're not in one place. You respond well to lust, big dose or a trace. You lead me to greed. It's not what I want. You convince it's a need. In truth, it's a taunt. When there is anger pent up inside, you then do hanker to push it outside. I don't know why you are so cruel, cunning and sly, and wanting to rule. You're some kind of clown, silly and joking, a laugh or a frown, nabbing and poking. Yet you are subtle, silent, and swift, keen to befuddle on your full-time shift. You are your worst when the body is idle, every bubble you burst to retain your title. But, my dear mind, I'm not your slave. I'll reverse the role, get you to behave and be under control. It's my turn to reign. So settle down, sit. Magic is in the name. It's the perfect fit. Now just cooperate and take out your sting. Let us then celebrate with mantra we sing. Sincerely, former foe. Hare Krishna. Done. And that's about the mind. How are we doing for time? Just want to know.
6:01.
6:01. Okay, good. And so I would say revert back to chapter 6 from the Bhagavad Gita, which is talking about that peaceful mind, that thoughtful, penetrating mind that wishes to make its way back to a happy place. And I think that's where we all aspire to go, is to be in a place where there's ultimate peace. Krishna states in the Gita that prakriti stani karashati, we're struggling very hard with the senses, and which includes the mind. Perhaps that's the most turbulent part of our very being. It's the subtle side, it's the subtle, not the sort of tangible stuff. Like I know I'd personally rather have some physical pain than to have mental turbulence, because mental turbulence is so agitating that you don't know where you're going to go with it. It leads to so many uncertainties. But with pain, physical pain, or some injury, you can see some visible change, some healing. Like say if I have a cut, or any kind of injury on my arm or my wrist, I can actually see a healing process. And when something turns quite red, after the blood scene is over, then it turns red. It's actually a good sign. And then it turns maybe like purple, and then finally it goes to a natural skin color again. And yay, So the mental anguish that people are taxed by in this present day and age is very harmful, and it gets so difficult for people that it's hard to harness the mind at some point after one has been bamboozled by so many distractions. We live in the world of because of the weapons of mass distraction. Yeah, that's the fact. I heard one when I was on the third walk across Canada. I stayed at New Battleford. It's in Saskatchewan, off the Yellowhead Highway. And at the tourist information booth, we met a Catholic priest, myself and Guru Devan, and we just made friends. And he said, "Well, you can stay at my place." We didn't have a place to stay, so stayed in the rectory, and we just had real nice chats. In fact, he ordered some bread, which was sattvic, and it was like the Christian thing, breaking bread and then passing it on, like the Jesus thing, and it was quite heartwarming. So I just remember him saying this the first time I heard the term weapons of mass distraction. It's probably better to be killed by a weapon, a lethal weapon, and just die, be buried, go become ashes eventually, through fire or ordeal by fire, and as opposed to just being mentally being very disturbed by the mind with so many sensory teasers. We're all constantly being teased, and there is no peaceful mind. And the only thing you could do is maybe, from a practical perspective, is go to a place where there is a babbling brook and sit down by the water, hearing the water rush over, and that might help. Or according to Ayurveda, you might spend time in the water, near the water, or in the water. Our bodies are made up of water mostly, and so it's good when you go in water. Everyone enjoys a shower. How many people love being in a shower? Okay, and you're usually pretty happy because you're feeling good, and you probably sing in the shower too, and probably Krishna Dulal probably does because he's a musician. So I'm sure he probably, Raja can verify that whether he sings in the shower or not. But it's a happy state, and everyone's looking for a happy state. And the mind can be an instrument useful in this endeavor, but it can also be an enemy. So Krishna says that in the Gita as well, that the mind is either your best friend or worst enemy. When you have it somewhat under control, when you have it do what you want to do, then you're in a favorable situation. But when you're led by the mind, the crazy monkey mind, you're all over the place, and it's hard to be focused. Focus is a key thing. And I think I told you this story before. I'm sure I did. When I was on my first walk, I was just finishing up, and I started from the West Coast and I ended up in Halifax, and before going to Newfoundland. So I had just a few days in Newfoundland, but I was nearing the end, and it was the first day of the lobster season. And anyways, I was walking through the streets in Halifax, and a member of the CBC came. When the CBC comes, you think, "Oh wow, this is great! I've hit the top level." CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, they've got a good reputation. Yeah, and so she came with a tape recorder. That was in '96. So that's an old relic. Everybody remembers. It's worthy of being in a museum. So she asked me all the right questions. Okay, so when did you start? And I told her it was April the 12th, 1996. And how many pairs of shoes have you worn since that time? And I'll tell I've worn 4 pairs of shoes. And what's the reason for your walk? And I tell her I'm walking for a spiritual healing of the nation, because in '95 Canada almost split. We almost lost Quebec, and So that was one of the reasons. And I told her I'm walking for my guru. He would be 100 years old. And I'm walking for my health because it's just our bodies are made for that. And I decided to get away from the ashram because the food is usually too oily or too spicy or too, sticky and all those kind of things. For many reasons I explained. And then she said, okay. She goes, Swami, okay, now that you're almost finished the walk, what was the most amazing thing that you encountered while you were on this walk? And so when she said that, my mind went blank. It just went empty. It empties out totally because the interview was flowing so smoothly. And I just went quiet. And I had to think, oh, was it, I could have said so many things, the attack by the wasps on my behind, or, the bear encounter, or, or nasty people, or friendly people. It could have been or when somebody tried to, just run me down, I could have said umpteen things, but I couldn't think of anything. And so it just dawned on me. And I was praying very quickly, Krishna, help me with this. I'm being recorded here. I'm glad it's not live. And so I said, I know the greatest thing that happened here on this walk. The best thing that happened on this walk is that you're standing there. You're asking me this question. And I'm looking at you and I'm trying to figure out the answer. And that's the best thing that ever happened on this walk. So immediately she picked up on it and said, oh, I know what you mean, living for the moment. And hurrah. So that's the idea, is that we do have to kind of like cherish the here and the now, because that's in the mode of goodness. And if we live too much into the future, your plans are too lofty and too crazy and far-fetched. That means you're just too passionate. You're not realistic, And then sometimes this happens when you're walking. You do think about some sad moments, whether it's your dad died, or you think about reflect on that, or you feel like there's moments I thought I was so ashamed. I did that. I said that to so and so. I was so mindless. How could I have done that? What was I thinking? So sometimes when you live a little bit too much in the past, it can be a little bit depressing. So I think, I could be wrong, and it depends on the individual, but in the course of the day, we probably spend like about 33.3% of our day in the past. We probably present 33.3% of the future, like plans, dreams, right? And 33.3% living in the present. And maybe we should expand that, live a little bit more in the present, and then you'll appreciate more what is right here before you right now, the here and the now. So that's a little bit about the three modes of material nature. And the mind is always capturing those three modes. There's a mix there, and it's very important that we, let's say, make pure our intelligence. Intelligence can also play a role of entangling us more and more in this world. Just like our scientific community, thanks to them, I touched their lotus feet. They've done a lot of good things. They've made many conveniences, but they really haven't invested much energy in how you can, let's say, escalate in or elevate your consciousness. And they should be spending a lot more time in that area, in that field. So sadhana is important because it helps control the mind. Chanting Hare Krishna, anyone who's done it, they know it's not that easy to, and even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he reinforces that. He is the champion, he's the father of the holy name. He says, I don't have a taste for it. That's one thing. And there is no hard and fast rule. But at least he understands, keep at it. Like Krishna tells Arjuna, keep at controlling your mind, and just continue on in a detached frame of mind. So those are just some little tips that we might implement, and use whatever instruments we have in Krishna's service. Krishna tells Arjuna, be an instrument in the fight. Don't be in the way, like they have that saying in the army, the navy, whatever says, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So lead, take the lead, and make the senses be behind you and the mind, and everyone will come forward and do what needs to be done, and then you can be successful in Krishna consciousness. We have to certainly have a target and a goal, and when we're mindless, it means we're confused, we are whimsical. And Prabhupada, in the 16th chapter of the Gita, he uses a word, he sometimes mixes it up, demoniac and whimsical. So when you're whimsical, you're practically demoniac. And whimsy means that you have no sense of direction. You just are led by your emotions, whatever comes, And it was in 96 when I first heard the term. I started the walk, and my brother and her daughter joined me. It was the first time I saw one of the girls go, whatever, whatever. But there doesn't need to be whatever if you make some plans. And like there has to be some planning. Planning means a mode of goodness. So check yourself. Always try to implement the quality of goodness, or what we refer to as thoughtfulness. So I want to thank you very much. I think that maybe we have some time for your questions and deliberations. Please say anything. I don't mind. You can throw tomatoes. It's not going to hurt me because it's virtual. So, but if you have anything, I don't mind the criticism. But if there's something that stimulated some thoughtfulness even, then that means that we're becoming more mindful. Okay? So our host is the guy that looks like a gangster, the blue gangster, and that's Krishna Dulal, right?
Yes, thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you. Wonderful presentation. So, dear devotees, please, we'd like to hear from you. At the bottom of the screen, there's the reactions button, and you can raise your hand by clicking the raise hand feature, and we could take the questions or comments in order. And yes, we would love to hear from you. So, starting off here, we've got Mandala Ram Prabhu. Mandala Ram Prabhu, please go ahead.
Right.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, my obeisances. Thank you so much. What a nice topic about the mind. So sometimes, Maharaj, we theoretically know the right thing to do, and maybe we have done it for a long time, and then for some reason you just maybe stop for a day or two, and then that goes into a week or a month or a year, and then you can't get back into it, or even though every single day you think about it, but you can't. It almost feels like it's impossible to get into it. So maybe if you have any tips, or
So
maybe,
if I understand you correctly, you're talking about you're in the bhakti groove, right?
yes.
Everything's coasting along really well, and then suddenly something pops up that distracts you. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll give an example of, like, say, you do your sadhana, and maybe your sadhana is reading, and then it becomes difficult after some time. So what is that block, or why is what's the block in the mind, and how to get over that, even though you're supposed to do it, but you just
okay.
can't.
So you
can't
hit
do
a
it.
lull. You hit a lull or a low period, and you tend to kind of like stay there, coast along. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you got any tips, or
Any
what's the reason
tips?
behind it, how to get
Any
over it.
tips is connect with somebody who's not in a lull, but who's super enthusiastic more than you are. Go to someone who's more uppity up than you are, got more enthusiasm, utsahan, eagerness, lelium, apimulium, who's very enthusiastic, and that should rub off. That's onto your own person. So sometimes what's nice about technology, you can call somebody. I know that if I need, to talk to somebody cheerful, I've got somebody in Miami that I'll call. Even though I told you I don't have connections with Miami anymore, I still do. And I'll just talk to that person and he'll laugh when you don't need to have a laugh. It doesn't seem to fit in, but he'll laugh anyways. His laugh is contagious. And so I think that's what we need to do. Prabhupada, sometimes devotees need to also laugh just to be encouraged to continue on to move along. And Milton Berle, he was a stand-up comedian. I'm sure he's passed away. I'm sure that your mother probably remembers him. But he said, yeah, laughing is the best medicine. So that's one thing. And yeah, getting into good sangha, good association is another thing. And let's see. I think to be really penetrate and become thoughtful and just look at what's happening to you. Okay, you've hit a low period. You just don't. The graph doesn't show you moving up at all. So you have to look at that. And as you said, you don't want to be there, right? So then you get into a prayerful mood. My dear Krishna, my dear Gauranitai, is standing before your Gauranitai deities there and said, please help me get out of this slump. I'm in the, and if I don't, it'll turn into quicksand. I'll just sink. And all that will be left is my little fingers at the bottom, like some old Tarzan movie or something like that. Help. So I think do some of those things. I think that, get excited. If you're not excited, get excited. Somebody asked Prabhupada, how do I don't have enthusiasm? He said, well, get enthusiastic. I'm not wet. I didn't get into the water yet. Get into the water. Just kind of do it. Push yourself, man. I mean, be a little bit of a warrior. Just be a little self-disciplinarian. And everybody knows that through discipline, good results come. So just insert it in there. Do you remember that time when I told you 3 years ago or so, well, when are you going to do your rounds? When are you going to? And I just told you once, I was just firm. Do them. Do you remember that, Mandala?
Yes.
Do those rounds. Just get it done. And, so sometimes you have to bring a commander in chief into your life. Help me. Like say, Maharaj, help me. Kick me. I need that right now. I need the guru principle. I need someone to get heavy on me, shake me up a little bit. So just kind of do it. And just get it done, because there's no other way. Let's say if somebody gets into alcoholism, okay, how do they get out of that? It's not easy. It's a very difficult, very bad habit. Even when you see it's ruining your family life, it's ruining your income, you're losing your job, you're losing your friends, you stink, all those things, and you're blinded to it, and then you don't want to be there. So what has to be done? You have to go to some people who are going to tell you some good stories about how they got over it, But first thing you have to admit, I have a problem. Like one of my favorite movies of all times, because I used to, a lot of my favorite films were from the 60s. So there's one called The Days of Wine and Roses, and it's about an alcoholic, and he gets his girlfriend into it, and then he looks at himself in the mirror one day. Oh my God, what's happening to me, And then she gets into the slump, and she stays with it. He pulls out, and then there's one beautiful scene where she's so drunk, and he says, look, honey, we got to get out of this. Jack Lemmon plays it, and Lee Remick. Oh, beautiful performances. And I says, we got to get out of this. And I said, no, I don't want to to be part of that goody two shoes lifestyle, let's have some fun. You're a man and I'm a woman, and let's, all those kind of arguments that the mind teases one on. And so it's a real riveting scene. And then finally he just takes a little drink, and then he gets into, gets trapped, he gets teased, again, and very heart-wrenching story. So the point is that you have to admit it. You have to say, I have a problem. I don't want this. And I have to be in the company of people who have been there and who got themselves out or are working their way out. So get, I think what you have to do is just touch your brother-in-law, Krishna Dulal, who's a strong devotee, or his dad. His dad is much, even better. And just get some strength from where there is strength. That's what Arjuna did. He said, I admit I'm weak. I've lost all miserly weakness. I can't even stand. I can't lift my boat. I've lost it. So I see, Krishna, you were strong. I need you now. Kick me. Does that help?
That's awesome, Maharaj. Thank you so much. So,
well, you were awesome, especially if you kick yourself. But if you don't do anything about it, you stay in the slump, and then you're nonsense, and you're mindless.
Yeah, I'll do it, Maharaj. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mandalaram Prabhu. Actually, Mandalaram Prabhu is the Energizer Buddy, so I think we have to connect to Mandalaram Prabhu because he's the one who's got the spark.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj. So we had three more questions that were there. There's one hand that came up for a bit. It was Ralph. Ralph, did you have a question that you wanted to ask to Maharaj? Are you there, Ralph?
Yes, I had a question. It's about when you're going for a walk and you were talking about mindfulness, like the mind's always jumping around. Going for a walk, I thought maybe sharing would be chanting a mantra, Hare Krishna, as you go for a walk. That was all.
Oh, yes. Well, thank you, Ralph. I find that walking, because it's it's natural. I was going to say supernatural. Well, it is super duper and super duper natural, and for us. And so when you walk, all the items that are around you, it registers so much better. You take in a lot of good stuff, that is meant to be part of your day, and you become more attentive. To be mindful means to be more attentive. And so that's why walking is very much encouraged, as opposed to the fast pace, Watch out that escalator, Toronto airport. Yeah, so
chanting.
Take your time, just like take your time to eat also. I have a problem with that. Take your time to eat and really enjoy the meal. That means being mindful, right? And so same thing with walking and chanting. They really go well together, in my opinion. Because my experience when chanting and walking, because I'm chanting, Krishna's there, he's in my being at that time, especially. And then I relate to the objects that I see around me. Oh, this is the Krishna connection, that's a Krishna connection. Whether it's the trees I'm looking at and the blowing leaves, and or it's just the squirrels going, all these things or people's interaction with each other, which is sometimes not so very appealing. But you see, like last night, we saw a little bit of a scuffle, outside a pharmaceutical place, where drugs are dealt with. Anyways, and and I was saying, oh, mode of passion might lead to mode of ignorance. So then all of the, all the elements that come from the Gita just sort of come to you because you're connected through the mantra. So I find it It's very helpful.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Rob.
Maharaj, do you have time for one more or two more questions?
I sure do, Hanicha.
Okay. Next we have Shibin Sundar, Prabhu. Please, go ahead. You have-
Shibin, go
Yes.
ahead.
Okay, all right. Uh, Hare Krishna. Swami, you mentioned about karma yoga and to work. You have to like your work when you're doing something. So most of the time, I like the work by itself, but most of the time, I might not like the people I'm working with.
That's right.
There is a lot. I've been emotionally abused. I'm very vulnerable to emotional abuse. I can do hard work. I don't mind. I'm a registered nurse. I work a lot, but most of the time, the people I work they don't like equality. They like the supremacy. So like some of them try to dominate me by giving me some emotional abuse. So
Okay, I
that's
think I get the essence of what you're saying. Thank you. So the thing is that, okay, you're dealing with difficult people. What is there anything to be had from that? The answer is yes. Wow. Thank you for being a nag. Thank you for being such a prick. You're helping me to be patient. You're helping me to be tolerant. You're helping me to develop thick skin, which I need. If I'm just around people who are just always nice to me and praising me, if I've got like 10 million fans around me, then I'm just going to be, my ego's so bloated up, that it's ridiculous. I'm so much into myself, I won't be able to give to anybody else, right? So let there be difficulties because Queen Kunti in the Bhagavatam, she's saying, let there be problems. Krishna, lay it on. She's saying, bring it on, bring it on. Let there be problems, because when there's problems, I'm forced to think of you. And when I think of you, it means no more repeated birth and death. So I would say that difficult people can be seen as instruments, just like if you're with the armed forces and you got your officer and he's yelling in your ear and and intimidating you, and you have to go, yes, sir. And he gives it to you again and again. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So before you went into the training, probably you never used the word sir, probably. Now you're saying yes, sir. Even when you get out, you're a little bit brainwashed, indoctrinated. Yes, sir. To everyone you meet. So there was something good that came out of it. So I would just try to analyze, because to be mindful means to be conscious or conscientious and attentive to what's going on at that moment. And you have to sort of analyze, okay, this person is difficult, giving me a hard time. Okay, know how to accept that, accept it. And life is all about like being on the dance floor, the ballroom dance floor. And it's the guys there like this and his tux tails, and the Mataji's got a big, hoop skirt, and the room is full of these kind of people, and you're sort of dancing around doing the waltz, and you don't bump into anybody. So it's a matter of moving around, tiptoeing through the tulips, and not knocking one of them off. So learn the art of working, the art of playing. Turn it from the art of working to the art of playing. I had fun today. That person was such a nag. Thanks. Thanks a lot for making my day. I don't know what happens if you say that, you vocalize it. Thanks a lot. You've been so miserable to me today. Or don't say miserable, just say, thanks a lot for really, you made my day so good. Well, I thought I was not very nice. I thought I'm miserable. Yeah. It's really hard to be with miserable people, though. That's a fact. Therefore, we associate with devotees. We're not supposed to be miserable.
I have one more question. It's a true yogi have a stable mind. If there is a
A
sorrow,
true yogi has a stable mind. Yes.
if there is sorrow or happiness, or if they is meeting a friend or enemy, he has stable mind. So
That's right.
you earlier you mentioned about sadhana, or how can we have that stable mind? What's the practice that we have to do, to ourselves?
Well, whatever your thoughts are in the early morning, if you can stabilize your mind in goodness by doing some japa, by doing a little reading and maybe a little puja, however, what time you allot, set the tone for stability, set the tone for equanimity, even-mindedness, because the day will bring forth some challenges, things that might be hard to handle, hard to cope with, unless if you practice in the early hours this equanimity. So the sadhana involves chanting japa. First of all, taking a nice cool shower, chanting japa, and maybe picking up something that gives you a little energy for eating. Maybe it also entails a little bit of reading. And at noon, go back at that again, do a little analysis. How have I done, from 8 in the morning to 12? I got 4 hours covered. How did I do? And then you got another 4 hours. Just, break it up a little bit like that. And, just test yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next question we have from Sunil Prabhu from Ottawa. Sunil Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Bhaktimarga Swami. It's so nice to have your continued enthusiastic association and your spiritual upliftment. Can you hear me
Sunil,
okay?
is this Sunil, the Dr. Sunil?
Yes.
Hey.
Hari bol.
Yes, thank you.
I have a question. A comment and a question. Psychologists nowadays have become the modern day guru and shastra, right? People are flocking to psychologists. They're spending hours and lots of money, by the way, on their psychologists or psychotherapists and life coaches. And to some degree, there has been some success. You reminded me, with your military reference of a patient who has PTSD after he was in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, his motorized vehicle and his group went over an IED, and he lost a leg. And unfortunately, all of his infantry had passed away, and he saw them pass away. It was horrific. So he has PTSD, and he's going to his psychologist, and it has helped him. And I sort of, asked him, what about spirituality?
Oh, we lost you. Just at the tail end.
Yeah.
Sunil Prabhu, are you still there?
Sunil.
Can you hear me okay now?
Now we hear you. Yeah.
So, so he unfortunately had a bad incident in Afghanistan. He's going to a psychologist. He's finding that helpful, helping him with his PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But the psychologists say they deal with the mind, as we say. They're big proponents of mindfulness, but they don't really go beyond the mind, go into the soul, etc. I guess the comment or question is, we have so much to offer, in our with Vedic philosophy, with we have so much to Christianity. Why are people talking to psychologists and not going to churches and temples? Being eaten by Bhaktimarga Swami, for instance.
Yeah, Sunil, I'm sorry I couldn't capture much of what you said at the end. But I can interpret it. Were you talking about the benefit of spirituality? Psychoanalysts, they don't encourage people towards spirituality. Is that what you're addressing? We lost him. Yeah.
I think we lost him.
Hello? Yes.
Yeah, Sunil, can we ask you to sort of maybe just type it out quickly? Yeah. Email or in the chat, something real simple, like.
Can you hear me now? Bhaktimarga Swami? Can you hear me now?
It's bumpy. It's bumpy.
Yeah, the question is, why are so many people flocking to psychologists now and spending lots of money and
Oh, yes.
not
Why are
attending.
people going to psychoanalysts? Well, it's because they're having trouble. They're struggling psychologically and on all different levels. So therefore, they're looking for help. That's why there's a need for a guru, right? Which is addressed in the Gita. There's a need to go to. They're feeling I'm weak and I need to get strength. So they go for that. And of course, it's taken on sort of a business flavor, corporate madness again. Well, everything is $1. Everything is a price, unfortunately. But at least they're admitting I need help. So I think we're just talking about the human quality, the human factor, that there's a need for help. And that was there at one time by having Brahmins, priests, rabbis, whatever. And then you had other levels, parents was one thing, or aunts and uncles, grandparents. And so you had a whole community that you could go to absorb yourself in. But what's the problem now is that people don't have these shelters. They don't have these avenues to go to for assistance. So they just end up thinking, well, the only thing that's going to solve my problem is it's money. Money has to be invested. And unfortunately, it doesn't really work that way. People are just needing a little human comfort, and it comes in the form of listening. I think a lot of people feel good just about being heard. But when there's that dollar attached to it, it just taints it, But what if you're to talk to somebody you really can confide in? What a difference that would make. And it's because we live in a culture where there is no love and trust, or there's very little of it. And so we've alienated ourselves from each other. We're cutting ourselves off from our friends, or, of course, some of us do that anyways. When you become Krishna conscious, you make new friends. But there is a need to go outside sometimes and go for an objective listener, third party person. So we're just, what's happening in people's lives is just what was always there in the culture of the Vedas, where people are saying, I have to go to someone. They never used to call them a shrink. They said it would be like someone that you would revere, someone who's got life experience, stability, they're mature, they've been able to assimilate the philosophy, they've been able to dance on the ballroom floor without jabbing someone with their elbow. So I hope people will open up. I'm sure you'll agree with me, Sunil. They'll open up more to spirituality and to ultimately believe that there's a great power up there that was a person.
Oh yes, I wholeheartedly agree. Yes, I mean, people are just, unfortunately, the psychologists are mainly just dealing with the mind, but people need to go beyond that. Otherwise, it'll just be a temporary fix sort of thing.
Yes, temporary fix. You need to be able to, by cutting out God, you're cutting off communication.
And it would be an expensive temporary fix, unfortunately.
Yes, that's right.
Compared to,
people just say, "Oh, I just went to a psychiatrist." So they just feel good about, I just did it. Yeah, but did it solve your problem? Well, it's a work in progress.
That's right.
Common line, work in progress.
Thank you all.
Very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, dear devotees, for your wonderful questions. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for joining us again today, and for giving us your time remotely from Alaska. Is it warm out there right now? What's the weather out in Alaska at this time of the year?
Well, I'm not in Alaska. I was just saying that I was introduced as somebody who has responsibilities in Canada
I see.
and Miami, and I was just have to update my little, what do you call it? Your write up. And so now I have responsibilities in Alaska,
I see.
Minnesota, the Dakotas, Wyoming, and Montana.
Wow.
So you're going to help me.
Okay, Maharaj. Thank you very much, and I hope that you'll be able to join us again soon. Yes, shortly, either virtually again, or maybe again in person. And I know that we're, as I guess in an announcement, we're hearing that our Ontario government is slowly planning a reopening phase. Some of us wish that maybe it was a little bit sooner, but together we're trying to discuss and chat and see how we can facilitate in-person services as soon as we can do it safely, of course.
I'm ready to hop on the train, come to on the Via Rail to Ottawa.
Wonderful. Thank you
And
so
here
much.
are some fans,
Hare Krishna.
Sartak and Gabriel, and this is the last one. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Srila
Krishna.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Prabhupada. So we'll continue right now with some kirtan. We'll have a few more minutes of darshan, and we will conclude our program shortly. So just bear with us as we get set up.
Srila Prabhupada. Jai Shri Radha
Jai. Hari Hari. Harimanamrita Prabhu, are you there? For Jai Om? Good. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivirikcharya Stotra Stata Shishimati Divine Grace.
जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्राजकाचार्य अष्टो